The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc.
Welcome. Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we discuss the latest news and info that Feds need to know in 15 minutes-ish or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or just starting out in your career, we've got you covered. So grab your coffee, your energy drink, your green juice, whatever gets you rolling. Kick back and we'll tell you what you need to know but might have missed. We are your host. I'm Dan Sipe, and I am joined by the electrifying and energetic Katelyn Murray.
Absolutely. And I'm here in my spring garb. I am continuing my manifestation of spring. I have decided that it is spring, even though it's not yet spring according to the calendar. But I'm bringing in the spring weather, and it's working, Dan. It's getting warmer, slowly but surely.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think we can both claim some victory here because against Miss Mary's dubious look, I had mulch delivered about 10 days ago. And I was able to get 2 good days of getting mulch down, and then Mother Nature dropped an inch of snow on top. But I am defiantly pressing ahead with the mulch. I am not accepting the verdict of fat rodents for when spring is coming. So
I love it.
We're taking it from different ends. So
I love it.
So folks, if this holds, you can thank us. It happened here. You heard it here first.
We are the new Punxsutawney Phil.
Yes. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we have a great episode for you today. We're covering some really kind of high interest topics, I would say. So we're going to talk a little bit about the brand new in-plan conversion ability that you guys just got just a matter of weeks ago in the TSP. We're going to talk about what this means for something called the 5-year rule. If you've done a TSP webinar with us, you may know what the 5-year rule is. If you haven't, you should look into that, but I'll tell you a bit more about the 5-year rule here in a minute. And then Dan is going to talk with us about retirement targeting. And how do I build, answering that question that so many feds come in with, which is, what's my retirement number? What amount of assets do I need in order to retire? And so Dan's going to give us the absolutely magic number.
Magically.
It fits everybody and needs no tailoring, right?
Magically delicious, like Lucky Charms.
It almost sounds too good to be true. But before we get there, let's talk about this 5-year rule with TSP and particularly with these in-plan conversions. So
absolutely.
As of January 28th, 2026, the TSP now allows in-plan conversions. You guys got an email around this during the holiday season. It always makes me laugh when they send those emails like in the middle of like probably the busiest time of year for anybody, but it may have gotten lost in the shuffle. TSP is now allowing you to convert your traditional pre-tax TSP funds into your Roth TSP without actually leaving the plan. So this confuses a lot of people. My simple explanation, it might make you feel like an elementary school kid, but it will make it clear. If you imagine your TSP as a closet, an empty closet, and you imagine that there are 2 buckets that are sitting in that closet. One bucket is the traditional pre-tax TSP, and one bucket is the Roth TSP. So effectively what this in-plan conversion is, picking up dollars from that pre-tax bucket and then turning and placing them into that Roth bucket. We're never leaving the closet. We're never leaving the TSP plan itself. So all of that is happening in the plan. This is a big, hairy deal. And I mean each one of those words. It is a huge asset to be able to do this, to be able to do Roth conversions, particularly at times like this when tax rates are historically low. But the reason it's hairy is because it can come with tax consequences. And there is a critical rule that you need to understand about in-plan conversions before you do any, and that is the 5-year rule. Okay, so quick context here. When you convert your traditional TSP money over to a Roth IRA, that amount becomes taxable income at both the federal and state level in the year that you make the conversion. Second thing, and this is a big deal, this is permanent. You cannot undo or reverse a TSP in plan conversion as far as we know, so make sure that you measure twice, cut once on this. And then lastly, you want to make sure that because you are adding to your taxable income at the federal and state level, that you have funds outside of your TSP so that you can cover the tax bill. You're likely going to want to do that through quarterly estimated tax payments so that you're paying on the conversion evenly throughout the year so that you don't get slapped with any IRS underpayment penalties, okay? For more information on that, I know I just said a whole lot of information, right? For more info, join us for a TSP webinar. We will tell you at the end of this episode, we have one coming up. Join us for a TSP webinar later this month, or join us for a tax planning webinar because we'll talk about it there as well. Okay?
Absolutely.
So what is this 5-year rule that you're talking to me about, Katelyn? Well, actually, there's two, okay? Clock number one is your earnings clock. So from your Roth TSP bucket, right? Everybody loves Roth because you put the money in and it's after-tax money and then it grows tax-free. And then when you pull it out, it's tax-free. That's why we love Roth, right? In order to do that correctly, the earnings in the account are only tax-free if you are one, at least 59 and a half, and two, you have had a Roth TSP account for at least 5 years. Okay? So both of those conditions have to be met in order for you to pull your earnings out of a Roth TSP or IRA for that matter, tax-free. Okay. So if you fund, let me give you an example. If I put $100 into my Roth TSP this year and then I retire next year and I go pull that out, maybe I'm 59 and a half, but the Roth hasn't been open for 5 years. So I would be taxed on my earnings and that would be a nasty surprise. So to pull out earnings in a Roth TSP or IRA, you got to be 59 and a half at least. And you have to have had that Roth account open for at least 5 years. All right. A lot of people get tripped up on this with TSP. It does not mean your TSP has to have been open for at least 5 years. It means your Roth TSP has to have been open for at least 5 years. This is a really good argument. Even if you cannot afford to contribute to Roth TSP with your full contribution, put 1% of your contribution in Roth. Do it immediately. Start the clock. Okay. Your kids who are working summer jobs, who are getting some earned income, start a Roth IRA for them. Start their clock. Because then as soon as they turn 59 and a half, they can grab it. If you start your Roth when you're 59, you got to wait until 65 to get that money. No bueno. Okay. So that's clock number one. And that's on just pulling earnings out of the Roth TSP. Clock number two is the conversion clock. So each year that you do an in-plan conversion, a separate 5-year period starts. Very tricky. If you withdraw those converted funds before your 5 years is up and you're under 59 and a half, that portion is going to get hit with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Okay. If you withdraw your converted funds before that 5 years is up and you're not over 59 and a half, you may pay income tax on those earnings, because they were converted less than 5 years ago. Now, TSP is supposedly keeping track of each of the separate conversion buckets. Dan and I work a lot with TSP, and we have concerns about that. I would encourage you to keep your own records of what you converted and when, because TSP's record keeping is not necessarily things that they write Viking poems about, right? So not a lot of information has been shared about how they're going to be keeping track of that and what will be visible to you as a Fed. Like, can I log into my TSP and look at my Roth bucket and see my separate conversion buckets and the earnings? That would be awesome. If you've spent any amount of time on the TSP website, I think you are also probably raising your eyebrows at that. So keep really good records. And remember, those conversions have 5-year rules as well. Okay. So I do have a little bit of good news. You know, I like to chase bad news with good news, or challenging news, or tricky news. Good news is your direct Roth TSP contributions. So money that you are contributing directly into the Roth TSP from your paychecks. That's an after-tax contribution that can always come out tax and penalty free. Okay. It's only those converted funds and the earnings that need to clear those hurdles. So the bottom line here for you, TSP and plan conversions can be a really, really powerful planning tool. Okay. especially if you expect to be in a higher tax bracket later. And you may be listening to this saying, Katelyn, I plan to buy a can of beans every week in retirement, and I'm not going to spend any money. I'm going to be in a terribly low tax bracket. The tax brackets can also change. Your income is not the only moving factor, right? Many of us will be bringing in less income in retirement. Okay, not always the case, because that federal pension is a beast. But many of us will be making less income in retirement. However, the tax brackets can also rise, resulting in more taxes. So conversions can be really important, but don't just convert to convert. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You need to be thinking about, can I afford the tax bill today? How long is it going to be until I need this money? And overall, any planning decision, in my opinion, that you make should be grounded in your comprehensive financial plan. So if I'm doing Roth conversions, I am doing it in service of XYZ in the financial plan. If you don't have one of those, I would suggest talking to a federal benefits specialist and or a tax advisor if we're talking conversions before you go pulling triggers here. The rules here are really layered. Mistakes can be really costly. You want to make sure that this is a measure twice, maybe even thrice, cut once.
Absolutely. And folks, this represents a monumental change. We're rooting for TSP. We're cautiously optimistic. But what Katelyn said about keeping your own records, I think that's going to serve you well for the long term.
All right. Well, Dan, so tell me how much money I need to have to retire, Dan. I've been wanting to know. I've been doing this financial planning thing for a while, and I haven't been able to figure out my
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. Okay. So, folks, here's the thing. And if you've listened to this podcast, if you listen to me on webinars, read things I've written, you may not need a planner, but you need a plan. And learn that, know that, live that. Or you will discover that you're trying to figure a whole lot of stuff out on the fly and trying to get by in retirement. And I never wish that on anybody. So one of the things that we've observed is that many retirement estimates just go to a shortcut of replace 70, 80% of salary. That might not reflect your actual retirement needs. So going to give you another tool here, and it's just a tool. It's not an axiom. It's not an immutable law, but this would be the 25 times rule. And this focuses on your income needs rather than your salary. So how do you get to it? So estimate the annual income needed in retirement. Now, one of the things that I've spotted, Katelyn, I'm sure you've seen it, is that sometimes people in their mind's eye, they're not really planning, they're not really crunching numbers and going, I'll be spending a lot less in retirement. Folks, I'm coming up on 40 years. I have never met anybody that was setting it as a concrete goal to have a substantially lower standard of living in retirement. Just haven't seen it yet. So I live in the real world. I'm boots on the ground. So you want to estimate that need as closely as you can. And when in doubt, build it around what you're doing now. Okay. Then subtract your guaranteed income sources. So the pension and Social Security, to determine what income gap you have. And that's what's going to be replaced by assets. So, for example, coming from TSP, or hopefully you've also built up some assets outside of TSP. That gives you some flexibility from the standpoint of taxation. But you look at that income gap and you multiply it by 25. So what's the magic of that? One of the things that has held up pretty well, and the publications take runs at it every now and again, but it keeps holding up, is that a 4% draw rate from invested assets in most situations generally lasts high 20s to 30 years, with a 60-40 portfolio, 50-50 portfolio. And that's a pretty good chunk of retirement there, hopefully covering the entire period. So within that, you want to have these planning considerations for those withdrawals. So set an income floor around the pension, Social Security, and anything you have in stable assets. Then your equity investments. And here's the thing. If you think you're going all to G fund and staying there for the rest of retirement, I guarantee you're going to be looking for a job when you're 88. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because it simply won't keep up with inflation. And now I can hear the keys clacking, and they'll show me how click, the CPI and this and that, and this is what the G fund did. Baloney, I've watched it in action. It doesn't do it because you got to factor taxes in there too. So then have the discretionary investing in there in the equity side so that you have a growth to outrun inflation out of, for example, for first people, out of that three-legged table, three-legged stool of first pension, Social Security, and TSP, there's only one that can outrun inflation. Okay. The other two can stay in the ballpark. Build a buffer of 1 to 3 years of the withdrawals you're going to need in cash or short-term bonds. Okay. So that way, market movements like, I don't know, let's say a military conflict breaks out in the Gulf and knocks the market.
No way.
It could happen to you and knocks the market down. You don't want that to be something that's keeping you awake through that entire time. Now, you can also use levers to reach or shrink that number. And these are the things people hate it when I bring this up, but when they follow it, they love it. So, for example, when you're in federal service, never, ever underestimate the greatest value that you have is your ability to stay another year. Okay, but I don't want to. Yeah, there's so many things in my life that went around what I want and what I don't want. I always want to be taller and better looking. It didn't work out. So I had to look at different levers. So you work a little longer. You can delay Social Security, okay, to increase guaranteed income. You can plan to reduce some fixed costs. So maybe you do downsize the house and then take some assets from that to pay off debt and lower those expenditures. Leading up to it, these levers you can work on now. You can work on increasing retirement savings and use catch-up contributions. Courtesy of Security 2.0, we've got some additional catch-up contributions for people between 60 and 63. No, doesn't include me. Not bitter about it, but you can put away more. And you can adjust your asset allocation to align with that time horizon. But here's one of the big things you need to do. You need to stress test that plan. So you need to run it as a base. You need to run it if you have a stretch of bear market and a stretch of bull market. Okay. Remember I said you may not need a planner, but you do need to plan. Okay. Model what happens early in retirement if there's a downturn or extended period of lower returns, and include some potential one-time costs. So really project that into the future and look for things that you don't want to have happen, like medical events or big home repairs. Okay. Be mindful of when you get to RMD age, 73 or 75, that could throw you into a higher tax bracket. If you're going to be in Medicare Part B, learn the IRMA brackets, because going $1 over, you're paying more for Medicare for a whole year.
Yeah.
And pre-plan spending adjustments, 5 to 10% discretionary increases or reductions to go along with better markets or poorer markets, and then turn all of this into a strategy. Here's the thing. What we have said, and we actually have it trademarked and copyrighted. So they showed us a three-legged table, three-legged stool. We believe there's a de facto fourth leg, and that is strategy. So embrace the fact that you're going to need one. Start building it now. We have incredible resources on the site to help you do it. If you want help, we're here for it. But if you don't want help, you can come in middle of the night, read my stuff, take it away for free, and tell everybody that I'm an idiot and they should come and look and and read it. I'm down for that. But this is how you're going to get there. It's another way to look at it. You may not need a planner. You absolutely need a plan. Don't go with three legs. Get the fourth. It's strategy. That's it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, one of the biggest things that we struggle with from a planning perspective, I think, is that mental shift from, what is the number, right? The number that fits everybody. And it really, God, it depends on so many different factors. Sure. Like, I know that, I think a lot of people, retirement is this like amorphous thing, and it's a finish line to run across. And there's not a lot of thought that's given to what is it going to look like on the other side? What am I going to do? You work at least 40 hours a week, more than likely, if you're listening to this podcast as a Fed. And many of you work 50, 60-hour weeks.
Sure.
Like, we know you, we work with you, we know the kind of time that you put in.
Absolutely.
And when you add on to that your commute, if you're commuting into the office, when you add on to that, all of the other things that you do that are kind of tied into your job, there's so much time that opens up for you in retirement. How are you going to fill that? And you may think, my family will step in and I'll be asked to do, my kids are going to ask me to do a million things, and maybe they will. But that freeing up of time can lead to exploring hobbies that you didn't have time for when you were working. And that could be something that's relatively cheap, not that cheap, but relatively cheap, like gardening. But it could also be traveling the world, which is significantly more expensive. So it depends on you. It depends on your values. It depends on what you want out of that time. So really, a lot of people think it's frou-frou and touchy-feely, but you really need to spend some time visualizing what that time is going to look like before you can put a meaningful price tag on what that's going to cost you. Because your life post-retirement is probably going to look very different. So love that, Dan. I think it's good to kind of get that metric of the 25 times gap, but then, personalize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things, Katelyn, I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen it a lot, is people discover that they have the ability to give time when they couldn't give money before.
Mm-hmm.
And we have seen so many of our happy federal retirees giving time to causes about which they care deeply. And that's massively fulfilling. And that doesn't cost a lot of money. So those are the types of things.
Yeah, totally. All right, folks, that is all the time that we have for today.
No, can't be over yet.
But sorry, it's so funny how things will hit you like a little song from the end of a kid's show that I used to watch a million years ago. And I almost sang it to you, but I will spare you that, dear listener. But we will be back next week to let you know about all the latest updates that you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed. And who knows, maybe I'll sing to you then.
There you go. And hey, subscribe to this podcast. Okay. You're watching it, and we know only a third of you have subscribed. Do it for yourself. Do it for your friends, because that helps the algorithm tell people this is worthwhile. Mm-hmm. So hit that subscribe button and be sure to remember to share it with your friends and colleagues.
Absolutely. And for more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, like Dan said, rob us blind in the night, check out the blog at blog.stwserve.com. While you're there, you can subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Survey, to get all the latest news for Feds delivered straight to your inbox every night. I'm not kidding. You can do this at 12 a.m. But don't we have some webinars, Dan? Aren't those also free?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Absolutely. The craziness continues. It's dealing days at Crazy Dan's Federal Emporium. So we have two really good ones coming up. We have our Survivor Benefit webinar. And believe me, there's a lot of juicy stuff in there that you don't know about, that you want to know about. And that'll be on March 25th from 1 until 4. And Katelyn, who's our host on that one? Are you hosting that one?
I'm pretty sure that's me. Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty sure that one's me.
And then we also have the TSP webinar on April the 7th from 11 until 2. And that's going to be this tandem doing that one. So we had a great turnout and a lot of fun last time we did that. So we're looking forward to it again. So please join us. And if you are looking for something that is a little more personalized, okay, you can schedule a one-on-one session. Okay. Just reach out to us at meetings@STWS.com, and we're going to help you any way we can on that, help you understand everything. And that's who we are. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, but being a mission-led organization, we're not necessarily looking to make money from every encounter that we have with you. We truly want Feds to have great retirements. We want you to have access to all the benefits that you should have as a civil service employee, as somebody who's served our country. And so however we can do that, whether it's blogs, whether it's podcasts, whether it's webinars, whether it is an in-person conversation and an ongoing relationship, all of those things serve the federal community, and that's what we're here to do. So thank you for your service to our government and to our country. And thank you for listening to the Fed15. I'm Katelyn Murray.
And I'm Dan Sipe.
And we'll see you next week.